How's it going, everybody? Welcome back to Repti-verse. I hope you're all having a fantastic day. I know that I am. If I look a little bit hot and sweaty, ignore it. Been doing yard work and working on my big yellow worms 8-foot enclosure. So I'm a little bit spent, but gotta film today so that I can get this video up for you guys on time. In today's video, we're going to be counting down the list for the top 5 worst beginner reptiles. Whether these animals are incredibly defensive, possibly dangerous, or downright difficult to keep, this is the 5 reptiles that you as a first-time reptile keeper should 100% avoid. So, we're just gonna go ahead and jump in with number 5, large constrictors. So, I couldn't really decide which one of the large constrictors I wanted to put at this point on the list. So I decided to just lump them all together. And what I mean by large constrictors, I mean things like reticulated pythons, Burmese pythons, anacondas, green anacondas more so than yellows, maybe even scrub and popcorn pythons. And this is strictly because they can be very dangerous if you don't know what you're doing. Some of these snakes, like a reticulated python, regularly get between 16 to 20 feet long, and that is a lot of snake for a first-time keeper who has not had any experience with snakes to take care of on their own. Now, these snakes are by no means bad snakes. Burmese pythons, for instance, I believe are one of the best pet snakes. I just do not believe that they are a good option for the first-time snake keeper, because you really need to know how to read snakes. You need to learn how to read when they're tensing up in their neck. You need to be able to read their tongue movements when they're in a food mode, so you don't become one of those viral videos of somebody getting bitten by their giant snake. And while they're not that difficult to care for, snakes like Burmese pythons, for instance, have about the same temperature and humidity regulations as a ball python. They just have it upscaled quite a bit, of course, because you need, of course, one of those big 8-foot enclosures at least for a snake like this. And reticulated pythons get even larger and need even more space. I personally don't really like seeing 8x4 enclosures with 16-foot reticulated pythons in. I fully plan on getting my reticulated python, Minerva. She's going to have a big walk-in enclosure that I can physically step into and walk around with her in it, which I believe is what you need for large constrictors like reticulated pythons. Which is not saying that these animals are inherently dangerous, of course. Burmese pythons, reticulated pythons, anacondas are no more dangerous than a dog, than a large breed dog are going to be. So I'm not trying to perpetuate the myth, of course, that these snakes are awful dangerous monsters. They just require a little bit more care, more experience before you jump into them. And these are all reasons why, as a first-time snake keeper, you should definitely avoid keeping large constrictors. I would say you might be able to get away with a Colombian boa, maybe something as big as a yellow anaconda, which get about as big as red-tailed boas, but you would still need to do a lot of research and learn how to read these snakes, as you would want to do research for any reptile that we're going to cover on this list, or any reptile in general. This is not a care guide, of course. If you want to get any of these animals, go do your own research. Do a mountain of research before even considering one of these options. Alrighty, so coming in next on our list for the worst beginner pets are Savannah monitors. So I thought about what monitor species exactly I was going to talk about here, because there are quite a few: croc monitors, owl monitors, water monitors. These are all not good beginner pets. They can be fantastic captive pets if you have a lot of experience, but I decided to put Savannah monitors on this list particularly because of their price. I can go down to my local reptile show and buy a Savannah monitor for $20, maybe $40 max, which is absolutely ridiculous because this is a big carnivorous lizard that gets about the same size as a tegu. They can get 4 feet long, and they are strong animals. So while your tiny little $40 lizard might be really cute when you first see it at that reptile expo, it's going to need something like an 8x4x4 enclosure, maybe a little bit shorter, when it's an adult, which not a lot of people are going to want to spend on a lizard they spent $20 to $40 on. You don't want to spend $800 to $2,500 on the habitat for a lizard that costs less than $100. And these lizards have an attitude, let me tell you. They do not have as bad of a attitude as people on the internet like to say they do. I have met some very, very calm Savannah monitors that'll act just like a black and white tegu. However, I've met some really, really angry Savannah monitors that are very defensive animals. And I've been keeping reptiles for about a decade, and I don't even like working with really defensive animals, let alone defensive lizards, because I'm not as experienced with them. Even though I've had tegus for a couple of years, I wouldn't even dream of getting something like a Savannah monitor. These lizards take a lot of time and effort and space and money to keep correctly. And those $20 to $40 Savannah monitors are all going to be wild caught, of course. I've never seen a captive bred Savannah monitor before in my life. And these wild caught Savannah monitors are going to come in with their massive host of parasites and other issues related to being wild caught. I'm not going to talk too much about that because we talked about it last week, but wild caught animals are definitely not the way to go, especially if you're a first time keeper, which is another reason why Savannah monitors came in at number 4 on our list for the worst beginner reptiles. Alrighty, so scurrying in at number 3 on our list is the green iguana. So, for a lot of the same reasons as a Savannah monitor, green iguanas make really terrible first-time lizards. I probably myself will never own a green iguana. There's a chance I might get a Savannah monitor someday, but that chance is very slim, and there's an even slimmer chance that I would ever consider an iguana as a pet. Now with this, I'm specifically talking about green iguanas here, not talking about something like a rhino iguana, which can make pretty good pets, albeit you probably don't want them as a first pet either. But green iguanas, for one, do have a really bad reputation as being very defensive animals, and they definitely are. I haven't really interacted with any green iguanas that are handleable or tolerant of interacting with people. Have you noticed a theme here on this list? All these animals can make fantastic pets, but you need to know what you're doing and you need to have experience before you try and own any of these yourself. Something a little bit different between green iguanas and Savannah monitors is their diet. Green iguanas are herbivores, so they're going to eat mostly plants and fruits, but they're also going to need it much more humid than a Savannah monitor is going to need their environment, and they'll need a lot more height because green iguanas, unlike Savannah monitors, are semi-arboreal lizards, meaning they're going to climb a lot. They're going to spend a lot of their time in the trees, so you definitely need to give them that option, which means that I would almost recommend a 8x4x6 or taller enclosure for green iguanas because they need so much space, and they do get a fairly large size. I think that with the tail they can get between 4 to 6 feet long, which is a pretty big lizard to handle, especially if you've never worked with animals before. And if you're dead set on getting a lizard as your first reptile, get something like a bearded dragon or a leopard gecko. Dip your toes in the water and make sure this is something that you actually want to do, because if you decide that maybe reptiles aren't for you, it's going to be a lot easier to rehome a bearded dragon or a leopard gecko than an angry green iguana. I have had people offer me iguanas for free so that they can get them off their hands, and I've refused them because I do not have the time nor the space to take care of a big green iguana that absolutely hates me. Alrighty, so coming at number 2 on our list, we have the chameleon. So chameleons can be found in pretty much every pet store across the world. They are incredibly cool looking and beautiful lizards, of course with their eyes that move independently from one another, their little crab hands, and the fact that they don't get very big for the most part. There are some very large chameleons out there, but chameleons like a Jackson's chameleon or a panther chameleon are not going to be an unreasonable size to keep as a pet. So why are they bad pets? Well, that is because they are incredibly fragile animals. Now, their care is not impossible. I would say they're intermediate to advanced as far as care goes. If you do your research, you can definitely do it right. But for the first time keeper, going to PetSmart or Petco, which I absolutely would not recommend, you are going to be given your Chameleon starter kit with your screen terrarium, maybe a fogging system instead of a dripper or a misting system like you need. Told they don't need any substrate and just to feed them insects very occasionally. If you only follow the tips from the pet store, you're going to kill your chameleon. I have seen so many chameleons in really terrible shape because pet stores don't know how to take care of these animals. They tell these new keepers to take care of them how they would, and it just doesn't work out for the chameleon and they end up crashing. Which is why chameleons really are not a good option for beginner pet lizards. If you want something arboreal, kind of like a chameleon, maybe look at something like a Cuban false chameleon. Now, the Cuban false chameleon, we're not going to spend a whole lot of time on, but they are actually a species of anole rather than chameleon, but they are much better pets than just, say, your chameleons like the veiled or the panther chameleon. And while you can now find Cuban false chameleons and veiled chameleons at your local PetSmart, don't go and buy from them. Go find a breeder that is breeding Cuban false chameleons if that's what you want. Or if you're dead set on getting like a veiled or a panther chameleon, definitely do your research. Find people who really know their stuff and buy from a very responsible breeder. Do not just go out to PetSmart and buy a chameleon because it's going to end very poorly. So without any further ado, number 1, hots. So if you don't know what I mean by hots, I mean venomous. Venomous snakes. Now, this is something that I have experience with. I do have a mentor, and I've been taught how to handle and work with these snakes responsibly, but you'll notice I don't have any. I might have hots someday. If I wanted to, I could apply and get approved for permits for hots today. But I do not want to because I do not feel like I, as a reptile keeper with 10 years of experience, am responsible enough or ready enough to have hots. I would want to wait until I have something like a facility like a zoo where I have staff and I can show these animals in an educational way without just risking my own life to have a cool little cobra in a PVC enclosure in my parents' basement. It goes without saying that if you have never worked with a snake before, your first snake should not be a copperhead or a rattlesnake or a monocled cobra. These animals, these venomous snakes, are way too easy to get your hands on, and in the wrong hands, these snakes can take your life. If you make one wrong step, you could, at the very least, lose a finger. Ask Tyler Nolan. You could very easily lose a finger if you don't know what you're doing, and that is if you're lucky. If you're not lucky, you will die. If you are not lucky, a venomous snake bite will kill you. If you go to the local emergency room, especially here in the United States, and you say, I've been bitten by a cobra, first of all, they probably won't believe you. Second of all, what do you expect them to do about it? They won't have antivenom there. Every hospital in the United States does not carry antivenom for every exotic venomous snake. They might have antivenoms for rattlesnakes and copperheads, but that's probably about it, and they'll have to fly in or hopefully get antivenom from a local zoo. And overall, one of the reasons why these are the worst beginner snakes is even if you have experience with a menagerie of other snakes, you should not ever own a venomous snake without a mentorship first. Do not go out and say, I've had ball pythons for a few years. I definitely think I'm ready for a gaboon viper. Because you're not. You need a mentorship. You need somebody who really knows their stuff and somebody who really knows what they're doing and talking about to teach you the ropes, show you how you want to handle these animals differently. You need to show them a ton of respect. So it goes without saying that venomous reptiles make terrible pets, especially terrible beginner pets. And the people that I know that own venomous snakes don't even consider them pets. They are not a pet like a boa that you can drape around your shoulders and walk around the house with. But I think I've beaten this dead horse quite enough, so thank you all so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, definitely click the like button, subscribe, and share it with your friends. Leave a comment down below if you agreed with this list. If you didn't agree with this list, still leave a comment down below and let's have a constructive discussion about it down there. If you look in the description, you'll find a link to my Patreon page, which is as cheap as $1 a month, and you'll find a link to go support US Ark. So definitely go show US Ark some love. I hope you all have a fantastic week. I post videos every Friday, so I will see you guys in 1 week. Peace out, YouTube.